My name is Dalal Jibril. I'm a journalist with long experience working for broadcast media, Al Jazeera English, BBC News here in the UK, and I'm currently the operations manager at the Britain Palestine Media Centre. I'd like to thank you all for being with us today. I know many of you, this is like your holiday, your time off, and you're here with us to speak about the plight of the Palestinian people at the time, and specifically the people in Gaza. So on behalf of myself and the Popular Conference for Palestine, I would like to thank you all for dedicating your time and effort to be with us today. As we know, this is to discuss the genocide currently happening in Gaza. I would start by introducing all of you and your titles. Please say hello, just so that everyone on the screen would know who you are once I introduce you. That would be probably easier. And I do apologize if I misread any of your names. I will do my best to read them the best possible way. So with that, we start. We start with Mr. Guillermo Kane from Argentina. He's the representative of the parliament in the capital, Buenos Aires. Hello, Guillermo. I can't hear you. I'm not sure. Hello? Oh, okay. Oh, the host has you muted. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not the one able to unmute. If the technical person behind this could allow our guests to unmute themselves, please. Okay.
Hi, thank you. Yes, pleased to meet you. I am a member of the state or the provincial legislator in the province of Buenos Aires on behalf of the Left Front and the Workers' Party.
Thank you very much. Bienvenido. And also we would like to welcome Mr. Carlos Latouf, political cartoonist and visual chronicle of barbarism, a friend of Palestinians. Hello, Mr. Carlos.
Hello, Dalal. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay,
yes,
great.
I can. Hello.
Okay, hello. Thank you very much
and
for the invitation and greetings from Porto Alegre, Brazil.
That's a lovely place to be, I suppose, much better than grim UK at the moment. So thanks for the welcome and hello. Yes, I would also like to welcome Miss Thea Leonard Drisner from the US, and she's the founder of EED of Leonard Education Organization. Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you here today. I'm hoping to learn a lot and share what we've been learning as an organization who has been dedicated to the education of Palestine's younger generation for the past 8 years. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. I would also like to welcome Mr. Tristino Marianello from Italy, and he's the legal representative of Gaza victims at the International Criminal Court. Hello.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Many thanks for having me tonight. And I also look forward to listening to the other presentation. I apologize if I will leave in advance, but I have another meeting on Gaza as well. So, but I will try to stay as long as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Miss Erika Prisnak. She's a volunteer at the IF Palestine. Hello.
Hi, from Denmark. I've just been at the demonstration here, so some of you might have seen us live on Al Jazeera or Al Mayadeen.
Oh, well, hello and welcome to you. I would also like sorry, there's a noise somewhere. Yeah, I think it's muted now. So I would also like to welcome Mr. Guillermo Lutterpride from Argentina as well, and he's a journalist and member of the Argentina Socialist Party. Hello.
Hello. My name is actually Guillermo Iturbide. My surname is Iturbide.
Sorry, Liturbide. I did want to read it in Spanish, but
with
it was
capital
written in
I,
English.
with capital I, Iturbide. Yes,
Liturbide.
I'm a journalist in Argentina. I'm a member of a left-wing journal called La Izquierda Diario. I'm also an editor and a translator, and I am a member of the Socialist Workers' Party of Argentina, the PTS, which is also part of the left front, Frente de Izquierda. And well, nice to meet you all.
Same well, bienvenido as well. I would also like to welcome Najida Keverkova. Again, if I tried, I hope it's the right way to pronounce your name. And she's also a Russian war correspondent and filmmaker. Hello and welcome. Hello. Is Najida with us? I'm not sure. Okay. Then sadly I would need to continue then with the reading. And we also have Miss Soraya Musleh from Brazil. She's the member of the BDS and Palestinian Latin Forum. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you for invitation. I am a journalist, Palestinian Brazilian. My father was a survivor for Nakba 48 refugee, and I'm fighting permanently for international solidarity in Brazil.
Thank you very much for being
Latin
with us.
America. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would also like to welcome Miss Shuruq Daqqa. She's from Venezuela, and she's the representative of the Palestinian Latino Forum in Venezuela. Hello and welcome. I'm not sure. Hello, do we have Shuruq with us? I'm not sure, actually. Well, we continue with the introductions. We have also Miss Stefania Rico, and she writes for an online magazine in Italy and is a writer for the Middle East News. So hello and welcome, Stefania.
Hi everyone from Italy. Hi, nice to meet you, and thanks for having me today.
Thank you for being with us.
Thanks.
And we also have Mr. Paul Norsey. I'm not sure if he's with us yet. Is Mr. Paul with us at the moment? No, I don't think so. He did say that he would probably. Shuruq is asking, can you hear me? No, we can't hear you, sadly. If someone from the technical team can help. Okay, then I guess our last guest, Mr. Paul Norsey, is not yet.
Sorry, Dalal. I've just informed that Paul is about to join. Maybe 10 minutes he'll join us.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I will introduce him once again once he's with us. If anyone can help Ms. Shuruq to speak with us, because I believe she is with us, but we can't hear her. Yeah, I'm not sure how to help that. Well, thank you all once again for being with us, and hello and welcome yet once again. I would like to start with our first speaker, Mr. Guillermo Kane. I would like to ask you about the current catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. Can you talk us through what's happening at the moment?
Okay, so I think the first thing to point out is that the speed of the genocidal attack launched by Israel starting October 7th has no relation of comparison to other wars and military conflicts being carried out. You know that I'm sure all present have studied this, have read the articles, have made the comparison, and many of you are active militants and activists of the Palestinian community. So we are denouncing in Argentina the need for our country to break diplomatic relationships with Israel because it is a state that is carrying out genocide. It is a state that is bombing daily civilian targets who do not have a regular army, who do not have anti-aircraft capability, and who are being massacred. Over 20,000 dead. So, frankly, in this, first of all, to thank the organizers. Second, to tell you that I just got back from a large demonstration against the brand new ultra-right government in Argentina that has just voted in a very serious decree of labor reforms and attack against working class conditions and laws in favor of big business. And the new president, Javier Milei, is a very big defender of Netanyahu in Israel. His last rallies before the final election were waving an Israeli flag. And basically, my idea, even though, of course, we study the Palestinian situation, we denounce it, but I feel most of those present have a much deeper knowledge than we do, is to at least give a report on what we have been able to do for the Palestinian cause these weeks of the situation after the October 7th in Argentina. Because for us, it is a matter of principle. Or those who consider themselves revolutionaries, socialists, or even humanists, to raise our voices against the massacre. And to say also that in Argentina, the situation has been very difficult because in the media and the main bourgeois political parties of the country have been part of a very violent Zionist campaign. Those voices who have been raised demanding a ceasefire, and those voices that have been raised defending the right of Palestinian people to defend themselves, to rise up against oppression, have been labeled as terrorists, we have been labeled as anti-Semites. A comrade of our organization, Vanina Biasi, was a candidate for chief of government in the city of Buenos Aires, has a legal, legal cause, a criminal cause for supposed racial discrimination, when all she has done is say, stop killing the Palestinian people. So we know this is a problem internationally. It is not just an Argentine problem. We have seen this. Evidently, governments that are siding with Netanyahu have taken this struggle in favor of Palestinian people also as an attempt to discipline and attack those fighting for freedom, those fighting for the rights of workers and youth everywhere. It is an international struggle for us. But in Argentina, it is evidently one of the places where this Zionist campaign to try to censor, to try to repress those siding with Palestine has been particularly strong. The left front is the only political bloc that has stood as a whole publicly in defense, and the only force in the presidential campaign. The rest have sided with Netanyahu and Javier Milei, for example, who won the presidency, says he wants to move the Argentinian embassy to Jerusalem, and he wants to consider Hamas a terrorist organization, and has supported all the actions of genocide. We, as we said, for us, it is a matter of principle to defend all those actions of the Palestinian organization. We do not judge them or differentiate themselves. We know that it has been decades of oppression, and we defend their right to take action against the ghetto, against the open-air jail that the Israeli state has been carrying out for decades in Gaza. This has been a subject of much debate. And the same time, in the same way as in Latin America, we know we need unity with those Brazilians, Venezuelans, with so many others who are here against imperialist oppression. We understand humbly that the solution for Palestine must also be international unity and unity with all those people that we see mobilized so massively in the Middle East. We are sad, we are concerned that the governments of many of the neighboring countries where the population is siding so strongly with Palestine has not taken more effective intervention and in the defense of the Palestinian people in this sad time. And we think that as in Latin America, in the Middle East, the unity of the peoples, the socialist unity, the unity in the streets and mobilization is the way to oust the colonial occupation. And we consider the Israeli state to be clearly a colonialist force, an enclave of imperialism that was put there artificially as an enclave of interest in the region. And that is why, evidently, the Oslo solution, the two-state solution, is proven
Recording
to be
in progress.
Incompatible with the lasting solution for this decades-long oppression of the Palestinian people. Finally, to say that as we socialists and leftists are together with the Palestinian community here in Buenos Aires and elsewhere, we have held an important meeting in the National Congress called, the initiative was taken by our comrade there, Romina del Pla. We worked together with all the Congress members of the Left Front, and all the representatives of the Palestinian community in the country came. A lot of important human rights organizations, among them Eres Esquivel, the Nobel Peace Prize of Argentina for denouncing the military dictatorship, Las Madres de Plaza de Mayo, Nora Cortiñas, one of their leaders, was present together with us. There we received even from Gaza, from some of the organizations in the struggle, messages, as well as from the Palestinian community in Argentina. And this is one of the things that was denounced by the right wing. So we want to say clearly, internationalists, anti-Zionists are not anti-Semites. We defend people oppressed, as the Jewish people and others were destroyed by Nazism. It is today a genocide that is being carried out. It is a lie. It is an attempt to censor. And we have seen the real anti-Semites, the ultra-rights, the neo-Nazis, waving the flag of Israel and supporting Netanyahu in Argentina and in the world. This new Milei government here in Argentina, just like Le Pen and in France and the others who were promoting these supposedly anti-Semite demonstrations, have members of the government like the vice president who defends those who under the military dictatorship in Argentina carried out a particularly strong repression and assassination of Jewish leftists. They have
it sounds like it's been very challenging for you guys to stand with Palestine in Argentina.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's I really commend the fact that you are still actively, despite the censorship that might be, and all the pressure that I'm sure is happening worldwide, but to know that it's that strong in Argentina, it's very commendable what you guys have been doing. And I think on behalf of all of us, thank you for that.
Yeah, I was going to tell you that in the massive demonstration today, there were Palestinian flags raised, as we have had them permanently in all popular demonstrations in Argentina, not only the ones that went to the Palestinian embassy or the Israeli embassy that we have done repeatedly, but today on the streets, there were tens of thousands of us, and among those workers who went with their unions for our demands here in the country, Palestinian flags stood proudly. So on with the struggle, down with the genocide.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I hope we see more and more demonstrations with the Palestinian flags and more support among the Argentinian people. If I may, I would like to move the floor now to Mr. Carlos Latuf. Mr. Carlos, I would like to ask you if the situation in Argentina is in a way mirrored in Brazil. And I would love to ask about how do you feel about the double standards in Western media and the official orientation of like European countries when it comes to the Israel-Palestine struggle?
Okay, I got 10 minutes, right?
Okay. I was told 7, but you can probably push it to 10.
I have a watch in front of me. I'm very sorry for the Argentinians because they gonna suffer more or less the same we suffer in Brazil with Bolsonaro, because Milei is a copy, is a poorly made caricature of Bolsonaro, Trump, etc. I wish lucky for the Argentinians. The role of the mainstream media, the Western mainstream media, is something we need to address, definitely. Before every genocide, you need to build a dehumanization, you know. So what we see, for example, the representatives of Israeli government is exactly a dehumanization of Palestinians. They refer to Palestinians as rats. They refer to Palestinians as terrorists, human animals. And this is the first step for the genocide, is to present to the world Palestinians as non-humans. And since they are non-humans, they can be massacred, they can be killed, they can be, erased from the map. But the Israeli government and the United States, because this genocide can only happen in Gaza because the full support of the United States and European Union, they can only share this kind of dehumanization in large scale worldwide, thanks to the Western mainstream media. And we see the mainstream media working side by side the Israeli government. It's like a loudspeaker for the Israeli government, for the point of views of White House, for example, about the situation in Gaza. And let's take, for example, in Brazil, we have a major TV, television, a major broadcasting called Global. And there is a very well-known, very popular, news program. And when Israel started to bomb Gaza, they interviewed some people from Israel to speak about the situation, but never Palestinians, only Israelis. Like, okay, now let's talk to a Brazilian who lives in Israel. Okay, now let's talk to a Brazilian who is part of the Israeli army. I remember a Palestinian Federation in Brazil demanding all the time to be heard. Just after many interviews with Israelis, Brazilian Israelis, is that maybe due to some pressure, I don't know, they started to listen to some Palestinians, because the Palestinian version doesn't count. No matter what Palestinians think about the situation or what they suffer. So even we daily watching gruesome images of children being taken from the rubbles of demolished schools, residential buildings, hospitals. The mainstream media is still insist to proliferate the fake news from Israel. And Israel now is the main factory of fake news to the world. And the mainstream media, they insist, to propagate these lies, this fake news. That is very important to create, to develop a system, a chain of Palestinian news outlets, Palestinian websites, where we can see the version of Palestinians, the other side of the news. Because, journalism is when you show the two sides and leave for the viewer to take their own conclusions. But what we haven't seen on mainstream media is propaganda, pro-Israel propaganda. So we need to support more Palestine. There already existed Palestinian news outlets, and to help to develop more, because it's a battle of narratives. You see, for example, speaking about fake news, the 40 beheaded babies, the mainstream media, the Western mainstream media, ashamedly, they share this kind of fake news all around the world. And just after this lie was debunked, they say, oh no, we are not sure, etc. So that's why it's so important to develop to create more Palestinian news outlets, to allow Palestine. And something important, many Palestinian outlets in the social medias like Facebook, like Twitter, they are being censored. So we need to reinforce these Palestinian outlets, and especially to have to promote more BDS campaigns, because it's proved that the BDS campaign works for South Africa and works for Palestine. And the best way to promote these campaigns is exactly through the Palestinian outlets, the Palestinian news outlets. That's why it's so important not only to show solidarity for Palestinians in protests and demonstrations. It's very important, of course, but we need to take more practical actions. And I think to build a strong Palestinian media is a way to show the world the version, the side of Palestinians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carlos. And I agree with every word you said, especially when it comes to censorship and the challenges that even existing Palestinian media has been facing. Thank you so much for your input and for being with us today. I would like to welcome Miss Dia Dresner, who I would like to ask you, Miss Dia, how do you feel education has been affected at the moment, especially for the students in Gaza? What challenges do you think they are facing, and what challenges have they changed since the events of October 7th?
Oh, yes, certainly. So just a quick background. We're Palestinians, diaspora Palestinians, as well as Palestinian students from the region who study outside or even at home. It's a volunteer organization. The students and the board and myself run the program. So I'm just going to represent university education because that's what we focus on, that this is really a catastrophe. As you noticed, as we all know, that education has now been halted, and moving forward is going to be very complicated. So I'd just like to start with some statistics. 88,000 students at university level in Gaza before the war started. 19 institutions of higher education, 12 of which have been seriously, totally or partially destroyed. 555 students had gotten scholarships overseas and were about to travel from Gaza when the genocide started, and so therefore lost that opportunity. We've had brilliant professors, presidents of universities, and many, many students killed. And these statistics were only, unfortunately, available from early to mid-November. So we all know that things are much worse. So addressing the needs of university students in Gaza this coming year. This is something we all have to look at. The university started 2 weeks prior to the genocide. So the students had already started. They'd paid their fees, and they were getting into whatever level of the years they had left. In previous wars, I understand from our students, I had asked this question, what happens? How does one recover? Our students have lived through 5 wars, for example, by the time they come to us at university level, and was informed that often the schools would go online for a while, long enough for the schools to regroup and be able to continue on as normal as possible. This is clearly not going to be possible for our younger generation. Too much has been disrupted. Students will, in most cases, not have access to their academic credentials to be able to transfer to universities in the region. And if they do, will the regional universities award them with their full transfer credits? This is a concern. The curriculum is different in the region. And the biggest concern is for a student who have spent 3 years going into their 4th and final year, how will they be able to transfer? And as we're finding out now from the universities in nearby countries, that the students are being told, no, you've got to start all over again. We're thinking initially an online education could be a solution. Students would obviously need access to the internet, computers. They've lost absolutely everything. They'll need the tools for study, and the international community is going to have to step up and help us support this. But till now, we're unaware of plans to address the continuation of their educations. We have not found any government is discussing it, nor any universities outside that we have spoken to. What are the needs of the Gazan students studying in the region? This is another fallout from this catastrophe. For example, there are an estimated 13,000 Palestinians studying in Egypt. Now, that includes West Bankers, and our West Bank community have also been seriously impacted. But today we're just addressing Gaza. So this is the information I have for Gaza to share with you. 5,000 of these Gazans are studying in Egypt. Their tuition, room, and board costs can no longer be covered by their families. Who's going to step up and take care of that? While they may be able to continue at university, so some in the region, you can defer your university fees, but upon graduation, you must pay the bill or you do not receive your diploma. So this has actually been the case of those who are extremely poor who've managed to get to universities outside and somehow managed to negotiate with the schools that they can continue year from year, but they do not receive their diploma until they've paid in full. And as you can imagine, after 4 or 6 years in medical school, that bill is very high, and there's still no solution as to how it's going to be paid. And of course, for all of the students now, this is a total catastrophe. What else did I write? Consider these issues. So what do we do with the students, for example, in Egypt, who don't have money for room and board? What do we do with them? Who's going to pay for them to live in Egypt? Because they cannot return home. This is a very, very serious issue.
It is indeed. I know of a few movements, at least here in the UK. I would say they've been carried out by individuals, which is not enough to cover the amount of people that need help. But I can tell you for sure, a lot of us here in this community have been trying to help students in Egypt and the students stuck here in the UK as well, because as you know, the fees must be just as expensive as they are in the US and other places, but definitely there's more to be done. And we thank you so much for the insight that you've given us into the challenges.
I have one more thing to say, because
Sure.
this was parts. I think I've got a few more minutes. Students who have left Gaza recently have found that they obviously cannot start mid-year. So students are losing these next 6 months and not being able to be in school. So how can universities around the world support the needs of students from Gaza? This is my last topic. We would request that the universities around the world consider establishing scholarships to address the needs of Gazan students. These scholarships would need to be comprehensive, to include travel costs, living stipends, computers, and full tuition fees covered. Mentors are also required to assist these students to help them navigate university selection and the application process. Because if these young people are dealing with foreign countries, if their English is strong enough, they can study abroad, or even studying in the region, they may need assistance, especially after the trauma. They may need a guide, a mentor, assistance in going through this process. Perhaps universities can design an examination to best evaluate the students if the students don't have access to their transcripts and cannot prove their grades. I remember in the Syrian war that nobody stepped up to take care of that, and there was a whole generation of young Syrian refugees who did not get to continue on to university, and their education was interrupted. We hope that all universities will also become more flexible regarding their transfer requirements to facilitate many students who were about to graduate. What about those who were about to graduate? Should they really have to repeat all 3, 4, 5 years? While immediate humanitarian support is crucial, we also should be thinking about the restoration of the education system ASAP. It's a fact that Gazans and Palestinians in general have a very high literacy rate. Historically, they've always valued education as a pathway to independence, a better life prospects, and dignity. We cannot afford to lose this generation of brilliant, motivated Palestinian scholars.
Agreed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Dia. And I couldn't agree more with everything you said, so thanks for that. I would like to now address or give the floor to Mr. Trestino. And can you talk us through the double standards of the International Criminal Court and how has it been going with the case of Gaza at the moment? Could you talk us through it, please?
Yeah, many thanks again, Lalal, for having me tonight, this evening. I will start by briefly looking at the current situation through the lens of international criminal law, which, as you said, is my field of expertise. I'm a lawyer, unfortunately, I would say. And I would argue that what we have seen since the 7th of October in relation to the situation in Gaza, at least, is evidence concerning the commission of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and as it has already been said, genocide. The list is long, unfortunately, of war crimes. I refer in particular to the declaration of the total siege by the Minister of Defense Galland at the beginning of the war. Total siege means deprivation of essential goods, which includes water, food, fuel, and electricity. And we have seen the effect of the total siege, which has also caused the death of infants in incubators in the hospitals in Gaza, including in the Shifa hospital. We have seen assist to the commission of war crimes, including indiscriminate attacks against civilian populations. And this is not a novelty. All the Gaza wars by the Israeli Authority conducted by Israel have seen the commission of indiscriminate attacks. We can go back to the Operation Cast Lead in 2008-2009, for instance. until now. In other words, indiscriminate means attacking directly civilians and civilian objects. And here again, the list is very long. We have seen an excessive use of force, which is also war crimes. I also argue that there is evidence regarding the commission of crimes against humanity. In particular, we believe that the forced displacement of almost 2 million of people within the Gaza Strip, where there is no safe place, amounts to the crime against humanity of forced displacement, which could also be deportation when Palestinian civilians move to Egypt through the Rafah border. And also, unfortunately, there is also evidence of ongoing commission of genocide. Genocide means, legally speaking, destroy a protected group, in this case, the National Group of Palestinians. In this case, destruction comes to mass murder, forced displacement, and the restriction of basic conditions of life. And we go back to the total siege again. Accompanied by a long list of genocidal statements by Israeli political and military leaders. I mean, the Israeli President Herzog said that there are no civilians in Gaza. We should stop with this rhetoric of civilians. Everyone is guilty. In population in which half of the population is minor than 18 years old. So, I mean, this says everything. Netanyahu invoked the Bible in relation to Amalek, saying that to kill everyone, including children and animals. And we could go on. I mean, Carlos was mentioning before Garland using the expression human animals, no, in relation to Palestinians. And dehumanization is a typical step of both the genocide in the history of human beings. Said that, and going back to your question, I think that all these crimes find a rich soil, a fertile ground in the climate of impunity enjoyed by the Israeli authorities. We are talking of a context in which there has never been accountability for the most serious violation of international law, which may amount to international crimes. There has never been accountability because international community has always provided Israel with this sort of exceptionalism, meaning that the Israeli authorities are above the law and also international law. After Gaza residents, the other victim of this conflict, of this, well, not conflict, of this war in Gaza is international law at the end of the day. At the end of the day. Let's briefly, since we have very few minutes, I mean, for instance, compare what's happening in Gaza with what's happening in Ukraine. In particular, let's look at how the international community reacted to the war in Ukraine in comparison to Gaza. I mean, in Ukraine, we have assisted to the unprecedented call by a huge number of states, in particular Western states, to accountability, to the use of instruments of international law. 43 states referred the situation in Ukraine to the International Criminal Court. They provided exceptional financial contribution to the court. They seconded staff, investigators, something like 42 investigators were seconded to the International Criminal Court. The US, which is not a state party to the ICC, are officially supporting the investigation in Ukraine before the ICC, which is unprecedented because, as I said, it's not a state party. But at the same time, in the same legislative act in which they support the investigation in the UK, they say that they will withdraw every sort of financial contribution to the Palestinian Authority if they continue to engage with the International Criminal Court. I mean, double standards means here discrimination of perpetrators and victims on the basis of their nationality. So there are victims who deserve justice and the victims who do not deserve justice. So this is not only double standard, this is selectivity and it's also discrimination, which means racism in invoking, international accountability. Among the 43 states that refer the situation to the International Criminal Court, there are a few European state parties to the ICC, which strongly oppose to the investigation, the ICC intervention in Palestine. I'm talking of Germany, Austria, and also the UK, the United Kingdom, and there are also other states in this regard. Which has been the reaction of the International Criminal Court? So these are the states, we will say the international community more or less, but how has the institution the tribunal which has jurisdiction and competence over what's happening in Gaza or what's happening in Palestine since June 2014. Here the competencies of the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, in this case the British barrister Karim Khan, who has exactly followed this policy of double standards. Before the 7th of October, since he took office in June 2021, the prosecutor, when he moved to The Hague, he found already open investigation, which had been opened in 2021, marched by his predecessor, the Gambian lawyer Fatou Bensouda. For 2 years and a half, the prosecutor has been completely silent on the situation in Palestine. He never put in place any effective investigation. He never sent any investigator to Israel and Palestine. He never took any of the measures that he took in Ukraine, for instance. He never visited the context. He never opened a portal to collect evidence. He never held any press conference. He never deployed any, and again, the list is very long. All measures invoked by Palestinian civil society engaging with the court. I'm talking of Halak in the West Bank, for instance, the Palestinian Center of Human Rights and Al-Mezan in Gaza. The prosecutor discovered the existence of an open investigation in the ICC after the 7th of October. At the end of October, he visited the Rafah border. And after that, he has published several statements. He has also visited Israel and Palestine at the beginning of December. This could be apparently a welcome development, but at the same time has been a faster sign of double standards, because on one side, the prosecutor has been very strong in condemning Hamas attacks, saying clearly that they are international crimes, which is also a bit arguable in light of, some important principle like the presumption of innocence. This should come at the end of the investigation, not at the beginning. And has been very soft and shy in relation to what's happening in Gaza or to the international crimes that I was mentioning before. No mention at all of the situation in the West Bank, of the fact that when he went there, more than 300 civilians have been killed by the IDF or by the settlers' violence in the West Bank. No mention of a long list of violations in Gaza, including the forced displacement I was mentioning before. The prosecutor just, when it comes to these international crimes taking place in Gaza, he just spoke very vaguely about the fact that Israel has to comply with international humanitarian law principles and reminding them which are these principles. These steps, these actions have been strongly criticized by the Palestinian civil society, which they took the unprecedented decision not to meet for the first time with the prosecutor when he visited Ramallah at the beginning of December. What we know now is that there is an ongoing investigation, but on the basis of all the action undertaken by the prosecutor and all the statements, we are Palestinian victims, the Palestinian civil society, and the legal representative of victims, including myself, are very concerned that this policy of double standards will continue, which will be devastating not only for Palestinian victims, but also for the legitimacy and credibility of the entire international justice project. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your input and update. And I agree, it's devastating and heartbreaking. And the double standard, I think, has been seen by all of us. And I'm sure you've seen it up close even more. So thanks for your input and update on this. Thanks a lot. I would like now to give the mic to Miss Erica Krisnak. And I think this is an important subject to talk about, which is the suffering of women in Gaza, because we always know that, a lot of them suffer in a different way than the common suffering. There's always more, it's just disproportionate when it comes to women, unfortunately. Can you talk us about what do you think the role of women advocates is at the moment? And are there any solutions? Is there any way to help the women in Gaza at the moment?
I think it's important to remember that women in Palestine have disproportionately borne the brunt of the occupation for many, many years. For decades, the occupation have targeted Palestinian women to an onslaught of multiple layers of discrimination and violence. And of course, since September 7th, it's only been worse. That even with all the international law violations, women and children, they make up almost 70% of the total death toll. So there are two problems with feminism here in Europe, is that they have two ways of applying their activism. One is actually using their voice, and the other one is employing the employment of silence. And silence is not just a passive absence of words, but more of it's been an active choice. Because if you look at what happened in Iran just a year ago, there were many groups that were very active in raising the support and voice here in the West. The consensus was very clear that Iranian women should be supported in the struggle. And I think right now, here a year later, it's been very obvious the silence that's been speaking louder than words. So I think it's important that especially like Black, Indigenous, and maybe marginalized communities within feminism should be the ones who are most vocal in their support. We've seen it here in Denmark that, especially in the beginning, in the demonstrations, it's been hijabis and other brown people that's been the most active. And then, of course, the West has joined along. Actually, we've been quite lucky. Especially here, I'm not sure how it is other places, but here they've tried to ban demonstrations. And even though it's a constitutional right, so of course it hasn't been possible. And we started out with daily demos. Now we have 3 a week and a larger one. And we do, I think, the marginalized communities within feminism have been the ones that's been speaking the loudest. We have the aunties walking in the front with the banner, with the flags. They're holding cake sales. They've really been a good front person, a really good example. And I think that's what we need within feminism, to be able to help women in Palestine. Because it's been very obvious that even though there are like several international laws, there's Article 2 of the Convention of Prevention of Genocide, Article 6 of the Rome Statute, which is prevent and punish acts of women and children. Even though we have all these international laws, the settler colony is not taking these laws into consideration. So I think here in the West, the marginalized communities should really speak up. We should rally together and march first in the March for Palestinian Women. They don't have a voice. At least they're not being listened to. So we should really make it clear and drag the men along and see if they can help. It's we have to make it clear that this violence inflicted by the settler colony is against human rights and is against international laws. There are many examples in Palestine of women not having, of course, not food or water, but also giving birth under inhumane situations, or having their period every month without having where to clean themselves. I know I myself am Christian, but I know there are many Muslims, and there are certain things that you should follow when you're on your period that they're not in conditions to do. So I think here in the West, we should really advocate for a permanent and immediate ceasefire where it's possible to send in unlimited humanitarian aid. But I think in this case, absence of your words makes your silence speak for you. So it's really important that we make ourselves heard, that we keep repeating these demands, whatever it takes, like just find our voice and fill that damn silence that is existing in the world that many governments are implementing. I think many of them are counting on us to grow tired. So we should keep speaking up and make their conditions more obvious for the world. I'm not sure if I replied correctly to your, or if you have any
No, you definitely have. And I do agree, this is not the time to be silent about this. This is the time to actually continue mobilizing and speaking up for the rights of everyone in Palestine, and specifically the needs of women that at the moment they are very underprivileged as well. Thank you so much for your input, Ms. Erica. And yeah, thanks a lot. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Guillermo Lotrpide. I hope I said it correctly this time. And yourself, you're a journalist, and I'm sure you've been following on what's been happening. On top of the Gazan people suffering a genocide, they're also suffering from the stopping of I'm sorry, I'm so sorry again. We're talking about the misinformation as well that is happening right now in the media. I mean, Mr. Carlos and Guillermo have spoken to us a bit about it. Tell us your view on the media scope at the moment in Argentina, please.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of misinformation. There's journalists or public people who came out for ceasefire or came out supporting Palestinians or even mildly criticizing Israel are facing a tremendous persecution in the media, in social networks, through legal means, in public opinion. For instance, recently there was a journalist who was invited to a TV program here in Argentina. She barely started speaking, and she came out for a ceasefire and even lamenting casualties on both sides. And she was immediately censored and expelled from TV, from the TV studios. For instance, here there are journalists, TV news anchors who have Israeli flags on their desks on TV, well, the TV here and the media is consistently pro-Israel, and well, myself, I have recently written, for instance, about how Marxism dealt with the Jewish question historically. I wrote an article in Spanish about that, on how Marxism dealt with the Jewish question in the light of the current genocide on Gaza. And I talked about the Jewish question and anti-Semitism, and I think that the creation of the State of Israel has not solved anti-Semitism or the Jewish question. Far from that, it has worsened. Anti-Semitism was aggravated by the creation of the State of Israel, because Jews are identified with a criminal state, which even massacres another Semite people like the Palestinians. And so this is this could only worsen anti-Semitism, far from solving it. So the State of Israel is not a solution for anti-Semitism. Such kinds of opinions here in Argentina are extremely unpopular, are censored in the big media and the large media. And for instance, I am also a political activist in the left. I am an activist in the left front. And as you might know, recently there were presidential elections here in Argentina. Like another speaker recently said that, Javier Milei is the new president in Argentina, and he's a far-right politician. He's a hard Zionist politician. He boasts of his contacts with the most conservative figures of the Jewish religious establishment. He even thinks about converting to Judaism. He's a Catholic. And well, in these presidential elections, there was a comrade of mine, Miriam Bregman, who was a candidate for presidency. And there were, on October the 8th, barely a day after the events of the 7th of October the 7th, there was one of the presidential debates, and it was in the media. It was in the middle of the hype of all this hysteria, of all this pro-Israel hysteria, and there were 5 presidential candidates, and 4 candidates started their presentations by showing their unconditional solidarity with Israel, with Netanyahu. Even the candidates of the former government, who was considered a kind of a left of center government, a kind of progressive government. Sergio Massa, he's a staunch pro-Zionist politician. He even disavowed a statement by his foreign minister, the foreign minister of his government, even mildly criticizing Israel, and he disavowed it. He's a hard Zionist also. So the political establishment in Argentina is staunchly pro-Israel. And well, my comrade Miriam Bregman was the only one to raise her voice in favor of the Palestinians. She even denounced Israel as an apartheid state. And this had an immediate backlash, because she was instantly labeled as anti-Semitic, even as Nazi, which is telling, because she was the only candidate of the 5. She was the only of the 5 candidates with a Jewish background, and well, this is telling, because in Argentina there's also a considerable part of the Jewish community who is pro-Palestinian, who is against the state of Israel, who is anti-Zionist, and who has taken part in demonstrations. We, as part of the left, have mobilized, have organized demonstrations. We have organized audiences in Congress, meetings in Congress with representatives of the Arab community here in Argentina. Here, there is also a large, sizable Arab community, mainly of Syrian Lebanese origin, and we have been at the center of these demonstrations with them, and also with these pro-Palestinian Jews. And well, we are socialists, so we stand with the Palestinians with our own banners, with our own. In this way we don't share the politics of organizations like Hamas, but nevertheless, in this conjuncture, we unconditionally support the Palestinians. We side with them against the state of Israel, and and the left front as a whole has been a central part of the organizations of these demonstrations. And we also have links with organizations in the rest of Latin America and Europe, with socialist organizations. We have also been with them organizing demos and mobilizations in Europe, where there is a strong prohibition against pro-Palestinian manifestations. We have been threatened, legally threatened, because we have been labeled as anti-Semitic and so on.
What we mentioned earlier about Jews mobilizing for Palestine as well. it's a statement in itself that, these protests are not anti-Semitic. They are pro-life for Palestinian people, and there should be a very clear distinction between that and anti-Semitism, which they're not the same thing.
Yes, and they are much against the current also. They are much against the current because large parts of the Jewish community here in Argentina are staunchly pro-Zionist. Yeah,
of course. I think this is somewhat historical in Argentina in a way, and it does go back for a long time. I thank you so much. I'm just a bit conscious of time, but thank you so much for your input. To kind of like break it off a bit, I'm going to be reading some of the comments. So I'm going to start from the latest one. Ecolab has been saying, as it's a stigmatized topic, I suppose, speaking about Palestine, we see on Instagram people have a natural coping mechanism while going through trauma. There's also been a conversation here from Mr. Yasser Hamad saying a huge psychiatrics program should be launched post-war to deal with and treat all the trauma the women, children, and men are going through for so long. Even the human being psychiatrics health in Gaza will need to be restored away from the terror that they have been facing. And this is so true. And I hope, one of our speakers today will be a psychologist. Maybe we can tackle upon that subject as well. Another comment from Mr. Ahmed Shaban saying, we will never forget, we will never stop sharing, free Palestine. Yeah, I'm going to be introducing our next guest, which is Miss Najida Kerfakova. And as a Russian filmmaker, can you talk us through the targeting of journalists to silence the truth and what's happening in Gaza at the moment? Could you please talk us through that? Hello, Miss Najida? Nadizhda, Miss Nadizhda? I'm not sure if she's with us at the moment. Hello? Could someone confirm if Miss Nadizhda is with us at the moment? Because I can't see all the names. If not, then maybe I can go back to her in a bit. And at the moment, speak to Miss Soraya Misler, a member of the BDS and Latin Forum. And could you please tell us about the global boycott movement, how it's been working or not working, and its consequences on the economy of Israel, for instance?
Okay, thank you. I think the global campaign for BDS is very important. It's huge campaign, crucial campaign of international solidarity. We see the results in Europe, in many universities in USA don't have any agreement with Israel, and I saw the information. Israel down 46% of his economy with this campaign, BDS campaign. And BDS campaign is involved different actors, different organizations that agree with basic human rights, like right return of millions of Palestinians, end of occupation and apartheid regime, equal rights of Palestinians. So this is the campaign. And in Latin America, we are fighting to reinforce this campaign. It's very important, including Brazil, because Brazil have many agreements with Israel, including military technologies agreements. And Brazil have a leadership in Latin America. So it's very important to break up the relationship of this criminal state of Israel to open the door in Latin America to another government follow this way. So we have in Brazil many universities that have agreements with Israel. So we work in academic boycott, military embargo, cultural boycott, but it's to campaign of BDS explain and the ongoing Nakba. It's very important. We need to explain and tell history of Palestine, history of Israel is a colonial settler state, and our details of this criminal state, and why we demand the boycott. The model is a campaign against international solidarity against apartheid in South Africa, and we now have some victories. Puma told affirm that no, he knew the financial of Association of Football Israeli. So this is very important, and this is the way to explain the people the huge injustice against the Palestinian people. In the same way, we need to explain in Brazil, and Brazil follows the typical position, diplomatic position, and put a sign of equal and oppressed people, Palestinian and oppressors, Israeli. Both sides don't have both sides. Have a colonization and people subjugated to apartheid, colonization, genocide, ethnic cleansing, and BDS help us to bring this technology to the people. So we have now, as part of reinforced international solidarity, unconditional solidarity, to do some actions in central focus of this campaign, like Carrefour, like Puma, like HPG, and this is very important. I think we are in way of victors and open the door to all Latin American, break up this relationship of state of Israel.
Thank you so much for your
and in this way.
So sorry, I thought you were finishing. Go ahead.
No. I think we follow the journalists Palestinians in Gaza, heroes Palestinians in Gaza. More than 100 Palestinians in Gaza were killed, and they lost 20 people in his family and their family, and continues. And we bring this information as part of put pressure, put demands in our governments to BDS and to break up this relationship with Israel. We need to isolate this criminal state. We need to say the problem is not one government. This problem is not left Zionist or right Zionist. The problem is Israel is a colonial settler state, is ongoing Nakba. And now we see the new phase of this Nakba. We need to stop this.
Thank you so much. It is indeed an ongoing Nakba. And thank you so much for your input and your role as well. Just a bit conscious of time, I would have to introduce Ms. Shuruq Daqqa, who to speak to us about the European Street Pulse, psychological support for Gazan expatriates. Ms. Shuruq, are you with us?
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Salam alaikum. Thank you.
Sorry, I was
Thank
just
you, Dalal, for
saying goodbye to Mr. Guillermo, who's leaving us. And please, by all means, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Alaikum salam. للجميع. Sorry, my English is not very well, but I'm Shuruq Daqqa. I'm activist for Palestine. I'm a member of Palestinian movement of solidarity in Venezuela. This name is Al-Awda, the Palestinian movement of solidarity, Al-Awda. I apologize for my English. It's not the best, but I will do my best to read these words that I have right. Sorry.
It's perfectly clear, I have to say.
Thank you. To talk today about stopping the genocide in Gaza without talking about the end of colonialism and occupation is to ignore the basis that has generated this and to continue in the same sequence of injustice and inhumanity. Today, the world must understand that we are facing a criminal ideology worse than Nazis. The worthy peoples of the world and their governments must understand that the fight for liberation that Palestine continues to wage today after millions is a fight for world liberation from terrorists, fascists, and oppression. Paradoxically, in a post-colonial era, the West gives speeches of democracy, freedom, and peace, while savage colonialism expands under the complicit silence of many powers and governments. It is time to wake up. It's time for us to fight together the fight for just peace and liberation. Today, what is happening in Gaza is unacceptable. It's terrible. It's atrocious. It's a criminal to think that we are even capable and demanding, firmly pressuring the entry for all the necessary aid for the Palestinian people who have the seeds to die or be free. Zionist murders with bombs, with missiles, hunger, abuse, and more. We have witnessed from afar or near all types of abuse, violations of the most basic human rights, while some sleep with rotten conscience, and others just ask to live and stop listening to the bombs fall around them. These meetings, more than adding voice for Palestine, must add concrete actions so that this stop, so that the entire world sanction the Zionist state, and so that it sincerely promised never in history to repeat such barbarity. Our call at this decisive moment in the history of the Palestinian people and humanity is to remain firm in the streets, in the organization, but above all in action from each of our trends and professions or talents, raising our voices for justice, for humanity, for a world free of Zionists, and for a Palestine free of Israeli colonialism. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. I was saying thank you so much for your input and for reading to us such important and compelling words. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for your time. I would like now to introduce Miss Stefania Rico. And I would like to ask you, Stefania, tell us or walk us through the general situation in Gaza as we speak and the aggression happening on its people, please.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. And I wanted to say to everyone that is my first time having a public speech. So I thank you in advance for your patience and I will try to do my best. So
I'm sure you will do amazing. So floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Well, I have a master's degree in Arabic language and economics of Arab countries, and I lived in Lebanon in 2019 in the refugee camp of Burj al-Shamali, Palestinian refugee camp, and I lived in Lebanon also in 2022 and 2023, like right now. And I collaborate as an editor and writer for the online magazine Clean Amen in Italy, but as there are people more experienced than me, I would like just to talk to you as a young 25 years old woman living in Italy and that studied in Italy and that reads Italian newspapers every day. So, well, the situation in Gaza, I think everyone here knows how is it going, and everyone reads the newspaper in Western countries. So we can see that there isn't a match between what's happening and what we are reading, no? And I really think that Italian newspapers are full of double standards as all the other Western journals. And this is a big problem. As Tristino said, I think before, there is a big difference of narrative towards the Russian-Ukraine war and towards Israel and Palestine, but he explained it very well, so I will not repeat it. Just, I would like to say that Western countries are helping Ukraine for an invasion, and they are denying the same right for Palestinians, even if this is occurring like it started 75 years ago. Then regarding the genocide in Gaza itself, I think that one strategy that Western media are using is to create a false equivalence that hides the asymmetry of power between the state of Israel and Palestine, and they're really not equal. Like one occupies and the other is occupied. One creates checkpoints and the other has to wait 3 hours in line to move from one place to another. As one controls the import of goods and the other one has to wait to eat and to have water to drink. So this is the first problem that is going through, like, okay, it started many years ago, but now is even more and more common. Also because, for example, for humanitarian aid, Palestinians are not receiving humanitarian aid for the same reason, for the same control. And another double standard is found in the consideration for Israeli and Palestinian civilians. Like Israelis are considered poor martyrs, while Palestinians, especially in Italy, I don't really know for other medias, but are all considered part of Hamas. So they are not even called Palestinians. And I think that the same problem is shown also in the language, no? Like, for example, if we speak about children in Italian television, we called Palestinian children like civilians under 18. And while we speak about Israeli children, we we just create a storytelling behind their lives. We interview their families, we show their pictures. And so this is, of course, a strategy of dehumanization that Tristino said before also. And that is working well, of course, especially for people that don't really know the story and that didn't study this in schools, for example. And I really think that another one is, for example, the thin line that divides being pro-Palestine and anti-Semitic. Because, for example, criticizing the Israeli government and its measures now in Gaza and in Palestine in the past 75 years for the West means being anti-Semitic and racist. So, of course, this has the roots in the Nakba, that it was in 1948, so just 3 years late after the end of the Second World War. And so simply like the Western government just wanted to have an expiation, accepting what was going on in Palestine and in the Middle East. And to conclude briefly, I just wanted to say that another one is the self-interest of the West, and Palestinian freedom isn't in line with the interest of the Western countries and powers because they are led by United States. So if no institutional power intervenes in the genocide happening in Gaza, I think it's because maintaining the agreements with Israel is more important for every individual Western country. And just to conclude, I wanted to say that, of course, we all know, but maybe it's important to repeat it, that recognizing Israeli occupation in Palestine and the ongoing genocide, and call it genocide, doesn't mean being against Jews because they're Jews or being against Israelis because they're Israelis. It's just being against injustice, as I will be in 1945 during the Second World War, against injustice, against oppression, against violence. And it's a moral duty to continue to speak out about the subject and to raise awareness, to keep the attention high for us. And it's a duty of the institutions to push for a ceasefire.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stefania. And I definitely agree with everything you said. And that was wonderful, as I predicted. So thank you so much. I would like now to introduce our next guest. I just want to confirm if she's with us. Miss Catherine Bogan, are you with us at the moment? If you could wave to say hello, because I can't see you on the screen. Hello, yeah. Yes, we would like to talk to you. So I know that you've probably just been informed. So I would like to introduce you first. You're a trauma scholar, and I think it would be very important for your input right now, especially that in the comment section, that this was one of the subjects discussed and you yourself were commenting. You can't unmute yourself. Oh, can someone from the technical team, please?
Got it.
There you go.
Thanks so much.
Sorry, it's not me. Thank you for being with us. And as I said, it's extremely relevant to discuss with you the trauma and how to heal the people of Gaza, of what's happening and what's going on at the moment. I also know you're an influencer yourself on social media, and you speak a lot about the issue. So please talk us through what you think is happening at the moment and how could that be resolved in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm really honored to build and share community with you all. And my boss always tells me the work that you do is important, so do it well. And it's really beautiful and inspiring to see everybody here doing their work so well. My name's Katie Bogan. I am a doctoral student in clinical psychology at the University of Nebraska. I'm a trauma-focused therapist, and I work primarily with survivors of sexual trauma. And prior to beginning my PhD work, I worked for 5 years in violence prevention research at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, doing social norms-based interventions to prevent community violence. So all of my work, all of my clinical work, my research background is on violence prevention. And I am an American Jewish woman. I was raised by the son of a Holocaust survivor. My grandfather was liberated from a camp in 1945 with his sister Helen. And I was raised in a staunchly Zionist household. My family spoke of the sort of promise of the state of Israel the entire time I was growing up. And as a child, I bought into the fiction because I was taught nothing else. And when I started joining more progressive political organizing movements and getting to know leftist politics when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I went through the process as an American Jew of unlearning Zionism. And from sort of the social norms work that I have done on a research level and in a research space, and the anti-Zionism, sort of unlearning Zionism and becoming like developing a pro-Palestine politic work that I've done on an individual space, I feel very, very strongly about the efficacy of interventions to help people develop a more liberatory politic. So I'll introduce one of these potential avenues. And I'm happy to talk as well about my family background and the process of unlearning Zionism another time if folks are interested or if there are questions. But one of the interventions that I got to work on for 5 years was a social norms intervention. And social norms theory is really about correcting people's misperceptions about what is normative. And it's built on two different theoretical grounds, the idea of pluralistic ignorance and false consensus. And I'll define these and give examples about how they apply to the Israeli perpetrated genocide. So pluralistic ignorance is the phenomenon by which individuals mistakenly perceive the attitudes and behaviors of their peers to be different from their own. This misperception usually occurs in the context of problem or risk behaviors. So what we would consider bad behaviors, things like accepting or perpetrating a genocide, are usually overestimated, and healthy or protective behaviors or good behaviors are underestimated. Pluralistic ignorance leads individuals to adjust their own behavior to align with the perceived norm, subsequently influencing the expression or rationalization of problem behaviors and inhibiting healthy protective behaviors like bystander intervention, like naming this as a genocide, like holding Israel accountable for human rights abuses. And the false consensus effect is the other side of that coin, where we have people, often perpetrators, falsely believing that other people share similar views and behaviors when in fact they do not. The false consensus effect can lead bullies, for example, to interpret lack of intervention against their violent behaviors as proof of implicit approval of their violence. And so how might this be functioning in sort of the news context and conversations about Israel and Palestine? So pluralistic ignorance may be functioning via people who support Palestine falsely believing that they are alone in their condemnation of Israel's violation of human rights, or falsely believing that other people in their communities or their social networks disagree. People who support Palestine may overestimate support for Israel and their own networks, underestimate shared support for Palestine because of the relative salience for us of positive and negative social cues. So if you say something in a group about how heartbroken you are over the plight of Palestinians and the children of Palestine who are undergoing bombardment and the abuse toward Palestinian women and the martyrdom of Palestinian men, and one person makes a disgusted face and everyone else in the circle is nodding, you might internalize that look of disgust more than you recognize the however many other people are agreeing with you. And on the other hand, the false consensus effect may work in this context of, Israelis, American Jews, corporations and businesses that are vested in Israel, falsely believing that their peers, their colleagues, their collaborators agree with their support of Israeli aggression and human rights abuses against Palestine, especially if these peers, colleagues, collaborators, etc., don't intervene against their behavior. We already know that this is happening in the global political community. So one possible method for intervention and for garnering more support for Palestine is a norms correction campaign. If we ask a large group of people very direct questions, such as, do you support targeting civilians in the context of land disputes? Or do you agree that governments should be able to target and bomb refugee camps during times of conflict? We may find that respondents to those surveys, even Israeli respondents, even Jewish respondents, could be, no, that's not excusable. As long as we don't name Israel and Palestine as actors, we might find that they don't perceive that as excusable. And then we can publicize that corrected perception of, 85 to 95% of this group of Israelis or this group of American Jews actually believe that this is not excusable. And that gives people more latitude to begin intervening as bystanders. And I think that that is one of the reasons that my social media garnered such shocking traction after October 7th, despite the fact that I am not saying anything on my social media that Palestinian activists, Palestinian women and feminists haven't been saying for 75 years. I'm not contributing anything new necessarily. I am aware that I'm a mouthpiece here. I am magnifying these perspectives that have already existed for generations, but it caught such traction and people paid such attention because I'm the embodiment of a violation of a social norm. People don't expect full-throated support for Palestine to come from a, young queer American Jew. They certainly don't expect it to come from the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor and someone who has sort of survival of Nazi crap in her bloodline, right? And so because this was a violation of social norms, people all of a sudden paid attention. And now I have latitude to reach 250,000 people that I have no right to these people's attention. There's nothing that sets me apart from Palestinian activists besides the fact that I am surprising. So there's been this sort of internal debate among activist spaces that I've observed about taking up space and whose voices are centered and who are we speaking sort of with, for, and to. And I do think when we're engaging in corrective campaigning, social norms campaigning, my research in trauma and violence prevention tells me you can target the victims of violence as much as you want with sort of risk reduction and self-protection campaigns, and that's not going to do the work. Those are the people you provide resources for once the violence has been stemmed, and in order to sort of keep them well during the violence. But the people that you target with the corrective campaigning are the perpetrators, the would-be perpetrators. So if we're going to conduct any kind of social norms correction, it should be directed toward people who are actively in the process of unlearning Zionism and can direct resources away from the Zionist entity, away from the state of Israel, away from Israeli businesses, politicians, arms manufacturers, etc. And in terms of people to center, though I'm kind of an exception to this rule, Palestinian voices should, of course, be front and center. I worry about this debate as detracting from a possible message and creating sort of sectarianism in that we should all be speaking as loudly as possible about Israel's violation of human rights abuses, about the violence that they are enacting against Palestinian civilians, as loudly as possible, for as long as possible, for the foreseeable future, sort of regardless of our held identities. And in doing that, we will also be correcting the social norms about who cares about this topic. Because if the Western world tells itself the only people who care about Palestinians experiencing violence are Palestinians, we're going to have a much harder time changing hearts and minds, unfortunately, because white supremacy is still at work within these systems that we're trying to change. So I will leave you, I guess, with that. If I had more time, I would sort of address a breadth of topics.
Interesting, but
yeah.
As a Palestinian, second generation Palestinian, I can tell you, you really underestimated your effect. You're not just a mouthpiece, but for us, especially in the beginning, the isolation that we felt, it was so heartwarming to see there's so many colors and there's so many faces and there's so much support. Because as you said, you might tend to see that one face and you think, oh, the whole world is against us. But then it is important to know that, you know, we're not really that isolated, and there is a populist sort of support, even if it's not necessarily reflected elsewhere. I think there's one question for you, but we have only 1 minute, Mr. Khalid Turani, please. If you could ask the question.
Oh, maybe he needs someone to unmute him because someone had to.
I just asked to unmute him. Hello, Mr. Khalid.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. I really just wanted to come on to thank Catherine for her voice and for her contribution, really. And I'm sorry, I'm running to get to the place where there's light. I think her contribution is like that, the contribution of many American Jews who are coming and seeing the light and recognizing the humanity and the suffering of the Palestinian people. And I think this is really amazing and incredible that our narrative and our story is a very basic story. Our story is a very human story. And despite the demonization and the dehumanization of the Palestinian people throughout American media and Western media in general, and despite, the wall-to-wall 24/7 pro-occupation media coverage, you're still seeing people who I think really need to be recognized, like Catherine and many of her peers, who are able to see through the thick of that propaganda that tries to demonize and dehumanize the Palestinians. So this is really an incredible thing, that if there is anything positive that would come out of the killing of 20,000 Palestinians, and I don't see anything positive can come out of it. If there is one thing that we can see, that is so many people are recognizing what a criminal state the state of Israel is. I have a good friend of mine, Miko Beled, who wrote the book The Son of the General, who's saying, why are you calling for ceasefire? You should be calling for the dismantling of the apartheid regime that is called Israel. And I think these calls are being heard loud and clear. And once again, I want to thank Catherine for hopping on the call last minute. This is good.
Thank you so much, Khalid, for your input. I'm sorry I'm jumping into this, but it's just that I'm going to give you the floor, Catherine, but we also have 2 more questions. But please, I ask everyone to please be brief, because we're running out of time. Catherine, is there anything you want to say to Khalid?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we talk about sort of this being a very human story, the parallels to Jewish history and Jewish resistance are so stark. And that, I think, is evidence that can be used against, anti-Zionism as anti-Semitic. Because when people imagine armed Palestinian resistance against their occupiers, I don't understand how we're not immediately seeing the parallel of armed resistance against Nazis in the Warsaw Ghetto. That was my first thought when I learned about the history of sort of Palestinian resistance of the occupation as well. My grandfather did that. His sisters did that. This is sort of how our movement was born and how our people were made possible. So I would urge folks, if they feel comfortable using that parallel, this is a Jewish woman endorsing your use of that parallel. Please, please use the Warsaw Ghetto. Oh, Dalal, I think you're unmuted.
Sorry. Thank you so much for your input. It's absolutely invaluable, as well as everybody else's. We have one last speaker that I would like to introduce. And after his speech, I will allow anyone who wants to make remarks and questions to jump in. You can obviously ask Catherine or any of our speakers, but I just don't want to keep him waiting. So if I may, I would like to introduce Mr. Paul Norsey. He's a representative of Virginia Coalition for Human Rights. And we would like, Mr. Paul, if you could talk to us about the occupation's violations of human rights in Gaza. If you could just talk us through it from your experience, please. Mr. Paul?
Yes, hi. Thank you and greetings and solidarity to everyone from the Virginia Coalition for Human Rights. Greatly appreciate having this conference. Since October 7, we've seen really a horrifying and apocalyptic escalation of Israeli human rights violations against Palestinians, primarily in the Gaza Strip, but also in the West Bank and elsewhere. In addition to 75 years of violent racist settler colonialism and ethnic cleansing and 56 years of brutal military occupation and apartheid, Israel has now escalated into really genocidal human rights violations, including mass murder of what looks like at least 28,000 Palestinian civilians killed by Israel with U.S. weapons so far, including 11,000 children, 5,600 women at least, and over 100 journalists, and including forced displacement of 1.9 million Gazan residents and abusive detention of mass detention of Palestinian civilians, and the list goes on. And Joe Biden's decision, President of the US, to support Israel's genocidal assault on Gaza, while he has at the same time condemned and provided military support against Russia's occupation of small parts of eastern Ukraine, exposes the deep racism and hypocrisy of the US ruling oligarchy. I believe this double standard grows out of a racist settler colonial mindset that pervades Israeli society and is also still present in some segments of US society, including, of course, Trump and apparently also Biden. I do think that this older generation of racist leaders is starting to be replaced by younger leaders that are willing to speak out against Israeli human rights violations. But unfortunately, it hasn't been soon enough for the 28,000 Palestinians that have already been murdered before our eyes in the past 11 weeks. The Israel lobby public relations machine has been working diligently for many years to make this genocide possible by attempting to silence any criticism of Israeli human rights abuses with dehumanization of Palestinians, false accusations of anti-Semitism, outright lies based on racist tropes and anti-Palestinian racism. These are all old, tried and proven methods to whip up jingoistic hysteria and lynch mob atmospheres as pretexts for massacres and genocides. This racist propaganda has even resulted in Palestinians being shot and killed here in the US. So Israel is directly attacking journalists and universities and schools and religious institutions and hospitals and medical staff in Gaza, specifically because it is trying to hide their repulsive criminal campaign of genocide against the Palestinian people. And these institutions are key conduits for information regarding what's happening. The hospitals not only save lives, but are also crucial in counting and reporting the fatalities and casualties, which Israel wants to hide. So that's one of the reasons they're targeting these groups. In light of Israel's campaign of lies to hide and justify their crimes, we must work extra hard to make our voices heard and give voice to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and demand justice and peace for Palestine. VCHR, the Virginia Coalition for Human Rights, joins all the major human rights organizations in demanding the following: immediate long-term ceasefire, immediate massive humanitarian aid for the millions of displaced, wounded, and now starving people in Gaza, immediate end to any further military assistance to Israel, an immediate end to the forcible displacement of millions of Palestinians and the use of so-called quote, safe zones, unquote. Civilians in Gaza are protected persons no matter what, and must be protected regardless of whether they are in a quote unquote safe zone. And lastly, we call on the continuation and escalation of boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel until it ends all violence, ends the siege and military occupation against Palestinians, and accepts equal rights and full human rights for all Palestinians, including refugees' right of return. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your input. I definitely agree the targeting of these specific groups have been for a reason. So thank you so much for explaining that to us and making it clear. I will open the floor for questions. We have Mr. N. Zakar. I believe he's been raising his hand for a while. So I don't know your first name, sir. So do you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yes, I am Nidal Zakar. I am Palestinian from Gaza, from Bani Suhaila in particular. I am the chairman of the March for Justice, speaking to you from Orange County, California. I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, but actually Catherine went to Brown University as well. I've been working on the Palestinian cause as well as many other causes, including causes for Jewish Americans and others. And I believe that injustice or justice is indivisible. So whenever you're working on any issue of justice, whether it's Palestine or any other issue, it's actually injustice done to one, it's injustice done to all. So from that perspective, I think that Palestine today represents the core universal cause to all freedom and justice loving people all over the world. And that's what makes it so unique, that you don't need to be Palestinian, you don't need to be Arab, you don't need to be Muslim, you don't need to be even quote unquote Israeli or anti-Israeli to support the cause of Palestine. I've been campaigning for Palestine for so many years, and actually in each and every campaign we had, the Jewish voice was very, very central in all our campaigns. We've always had even Jewish spokespeople in all our campaigns, and many of them even spoke Hebrew. I've done this work even at the Holocaust memorials from all places throughout the year. We've been at very senior positions in U.S. Commission for Civil Rights, in American Civil Liberties Union, and so forth. So I think we need, first of all, when it comes to these issues, one of the problems that we have that, yes, we know that there is quote unquote Zionist lobby, AIPAC, and others. We know that, for example, there is so much control and manipulation of the political process. We know that the media and the entertainment industry is highly controlled by quote unquote pro-Israeli Zionists. That by no means should actually limit our capabilities and the potential that we have, and make us speak out. Anti-Semitism should not be allowed actually to be like this whipping stick for us to be afraid every time we speak for Palestine that we're going to be accused as anti-Semites. We are the Semites, as a matter of fact. The ones who accuse you to be anti-Semite are not Semites themselves. So why we don't have a chip on our shoulder when it comes to the Holocaust? We're of course all against the Holocaust, and we don't forget that there's 150,000 Muslims, Arabs, and Palestinians actually that paid the price for trying to protect Jews during the Holocaust anyway. The Holocaust is one of our causes, not because political reasons, but because it was injustice that was done to humanity at large. So we expect, and we see that actually, we see lots of Holocaust survivors, we see lots of children from Holocaust survivors, Jewish people that are the loudest voices when it comes to the question of Palestine and being against the genocide that's taking place. We see right now, for example, all of these protests in the Congress are done by not in our name Jewish groups, and we see that 300 of them get arrested in one of these protests. So the idea is that Palestine today is the common cause to all justice, freedom loving people, regardless to ethnicity, gender, religion, and so forth. That's something that we have to be very comfortable with at this point. I think right now we need really to just go all out in terms of being strategic. One of the problems that we've always had in activism is that we've always been behind the curve instead of being ahead of the curve. We're supposed to be the initiative takers. We're supposed to be the narrative makers, and we're supposed to be the ones who really control the events and make the news and make everybody else reactionary rather than us being reacting to the events after they happen. I think this can be done very easily. It's a way of thinking first and foremost, and it's some sort of mental conditioning. Catherine can speak for that as well, where we have that mentality of we see things for what they are, we see what's wrong, we see what's right, and we try to put an agenda where we get ahead of everybody. And instead of being reacting to those people or quote unquote evil people in power, have them react to us. We have so many experiences all over the world. I've been part of the Arab Spring and very much played a key role in unseating some dictators in the Middle East and in some African countries as well. So it's not really like that hard, except that we need to get out of the mindset of the quote unquote the victim. We know there is evil in the world. There's always going to be evil in the world. But unless we are on alert and 24/7, unless we have it as a way of life to stand for justice and to preempt injustice and to make sure that justice is always contained and cornered, we really give them so much room to play when we don't need to. Thank you all for listening to me, and I apologize for the time.
Not at all. Thank you so much for your input. And it's very important to think outside of that victim box and continue to speak for the justice and fairness to our people. Our time is finished, sadly, but I would like to take this opportunity. Thank you. I mean, all of you. It's been absolutely wonderful and insightful beyond means. And again, thank you so much for dedicating this time in a time that I know many of you are on holiday to speak about Gaza, to speak for the people of Gaza in a place where we can freely express our support for them and our support for the Palestinian people. So thank you so much, all of you. And I think this is a wrap from us. I don't know if someone technical would like to take it from here, but if you have any more questions, please do email us or text us on Facebook. Also, I wanted to say thank you to Miss Catherine or Katie, because she's also left her contact information there if anyone would like to reach out for any further discussions or conversations. Please do engage, keep talking about Palestine, and peace for everyone. Thank you so much.